James Redfield, welcome to Montreal.
Thank you.
I'm very pleased to meet you and to do our second part of our interview.
Yeah.
So if you don't mind, I would like to do a sort of a recapitulation of the 12th Insight.
Well, you know, the 12th Insight is the last in the series of books that began with the Celestine Prophecy and went through the 10th Insight, the Secret of Shambhala, and now the 12th Insight. Mm-hmm. And the 12th Insight is the 12th and final insight covered. Not because I designed it that way, but because I think that's reflective of the steps in human consciousness that I'm describing. Mm-hmm. In other words, we're getting to a 12th, and that number means final, completeness.
Right.
And I believe that in terms of human evolution, as the Mayans have suggested, we're coming to completion. Now, that doesn't mean history is over, mm-hmm. but it means that we will start on a more complete road of higher consciousness as more people understand and integrate this 12th Insight. Yeah. And again, I'm not making this up. I'm describing what I believe is already happening among more people every day. Yeah. And that is beginning to live the spirituality that we've been talking about for at least in a very mass way for at least 100 years. Essentially what we're doing is taking all this intellectual knowledge and finally putting it into practice in a way that works.
Right.
In a way that can be proven to oneself, to the individual, as they live this spiritual point of view or the spiritual consciousness in their own lives. So you see, it's a kind of completion, not just among some books, but in my view, as I'm describing it, a completion in a journey of consciousness that mm-hmm. Humanity has been taking for a long time.
Yeah, and at the same time, it described what happened with the Arab Spring. And I think the book was written before. So you're sort of a witness yes. of a movement around the world. So what was, what brought you to describe or to just, feel it before?
Well, I'm using all kinds of inputs, observation, looking at polls, looking at interpersonal relationships as they're reflected in the media and in art, and also people's willingness to discuss spirituality yeah. in a real way, not in an ideological way, not in a skeptical way so much, but in a way that they're really giving it a test. They're opening up to this idea of a lived spiritual consciousness. Mm-hmm. And so, from all that, that I argue that this is happening already, right. and it can be proved to ourselves as individuals.
How do you see, as of today, because it's the end of a cycle, a first cycle of evolution, going through a more practical way of, living spirituality. So when you look back, since the first prophecy, since the first book, and you see all the way, how will you describe that and see how the people, had been touched mm-hmm. by your book, and the evolution, and how it pushed somehow proud people, to the center with your book?
Well, I think the first book, The Celestine Prophecy, talked about the reality that this is a spiritual universe that we live in, yeah. and that there's evidence that there is a spiritual dimension to our lives, yeah. And that this can be discovered, and primarily through mysterious coincidences that happen, mm-hmm. but also through the intuitions that we begin to become aware of, this sense of mission that we come here feeling. There's something that we all sense there's something we're here to do, right. And we're very, we don't always find it easily, mm-hmm. but we have that feeling, yeah. and every generation has that feeling. And so it's, you know, that book awakened the idea that it's believable to think of a spiritual consciousness, not just a decision to believe in God or not. You know, that's
it's not intellectual.
That's yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's not this intellectual decision. It's a consciousness. And the Celestine Prophecy was my first attempt to describe this process of awakening to this consciousness. And of course, through the series of books, we've come from an intellectual understanding of this spiritual universe to actually integrating the reality of the spiritual universe in our daily lives. Right. So it's come back home so that we can actually put it into practice in a clear way now. We've integrated all the intellectual perspectives about it into a form that allows us to really live it and prove to ourselves that it's the most beneficial life for ourselves and also for everyone else. Yeah. So it's a sense of clarity about how to live spiritually that we're discovering.
On the 12th Insight, not inside, but insight, you describe 12-step, 12 integration. Would you present us those 12 steps? Describe them and briefly, you know.
Well, I can
Otherwise, they have to read the book, you know.
Well, you know, it took a whole book to describe it, you know. But I'll give you an overview, certainly.
Yeah.
The first one is this first step in integration is really understanding that synchronicity is real. And the measure as to how much we're tuning into this spiritual consciousness is how much synchronicity is going on in our lives. So if it's just haphazard, every once in a while you go, well, wasn't that interesting? That's just the first superficial level. The full integration, first integration, is about expecting synchronicity every day as an intention that you remember to do every morning. Yeah. You cannot fully integrate a spiritual consciousness without doing this. Yeah. And with that, you go to a sense that this is a new worldview, that the synchronicity is real, and as we open up to it, a new epoch in human reality is taking place. Okay, so you got to know it has historical consequences to expect synchronicity. Yeah. Okay, but it integrates it fully because that's why we're all here. This discovery is why all of history happened before us. Yeah. So it's pretty exciting, right? Yeah. So, but the third is the most important, one of the most important integrations. It's that this synchronicity flows to us dependent on our understanding that we can actually have good karma or bad karma. Yeah. Karma is not something that comes from a previous lifetime. Whether you're lucky, whether things work out for you, is all determined by the state of your karma right now
your
as
action.
You go through life. Yeah. So whether you think you're lucky or not, we're understanding that there is that there is karma in the world, that it's a spiritual design, and it's essentially how we act determines how the kind of people that we draw into our lives, put it that way. Yeah. So there are two activators to have good karma, to get into alignment with this. One is giving. As soon as you manipulate someone to get something, just anything, you want them to like you. So you start manipulating what you say in order to get someone to like you. That's essentially a dishonest, inauthentic.
You took energy from the people.
Well, that happens too. Yeah, because they become confused. But the point is, if we're giving and not taking, every time you manipulate someone, you're taking. Even if you think it's a very subtle thing to do to get your business off the ground, or to make a sale, or to be liked by your boss, or it doesn't matter. If you shift from from giving to taking, you start to attract takers into your life. Right. Yeah. So what happens is that the people you draw into your life are, to some level, dishonest, inauthentic takers, and that makes your life improve very slowly. It makes your success come in spurts. Yeah. the two activators then is beginning to live a giving attitude always. Every conversation, every meeting, everything. If you're trying to figure out, number one, what you honestly should say to people to help them.
Yeah.
Honesty and helpfulness, right?
Right, that's correct.
Those are the kinds of people you begin to draw into your life. Now, what is that? That is, you're drawing people who are, I mean, think about it, honest in their giving. So they show up in your life very synchronistically to give you a truth that you realize came to you at just the right moment, often, and who are having a giving attitude of trying to help you, trying to tell you the truth, trying to help you.
Yeah.
Those are the kinds of people you start to move in your life. So what does that mean? Synchronicity.
Right.
People show up to give you just the information you need that allow a synchronistic flow to continue in your life. So that's very, very important to be in alignment with the karmic design of the universe if you want to have a spiritual consciousness.
That's correct.
So we discovered that. Now, after we begin to go into alignment, we realize that there are patterns to the way people try to manipulate us out there. A lot of untruths. And if you look at the two prevailing political realities in the world, one is essentially left and growing more far left, and right-wing politician growing more right-wing. Now these are both ideologies.
Right.
So if you join an ideology, they're telling you that whatever the precepts of this ideology is, the right-wing attitude or the left-wing attitude, and you join that to get along, you embrace an untruth,
right,
which hurts your karma. So what we have to do is come to the center where we can be totally authentic and truthful, so that when someone asks you or tells you you need to vote for someone because this, and this, you don't get hooked into that. You say, I'll have to check that out. Thank you.
Yeah.
You follow me? So the big difference is you stay in an enlightened, political, independent point of view, which is the only way you can stay truthful.
That's correct.
And the only way that you can have good karma.
Yeah.
So essentially, we go on from there. It's this degree of authenticity and devotion to the center, to the truthful way, which becomes more independent politically. What happens is that we have a deeper opening to our own soul, which means we have a deeper opening in this authentic way of giving. We begin to have more of a grounded connection with a missing part of ourselves, which is the spiritual part, which is the link to the divine in the world.
Yeah.
That the mystics of every religion have always pointed to. So we have a deeper. There's a lot more to this, but we have a deeper kind of connection that's ongoing with us. And essentially, once we get to that place, we have a connected life that is guided. How's it guided? Because when we are thinking, how can I help someone? That question is answered intuitively.
Right.
And that goes to, how can I help the world? Your mission comes out. Okay? And it's very, very important that we understand that the more authentic we are, the more this grows and expands. And we can be intuitively guided every moment in our lives. We'll get an intuition, what to say to somebody, what to do, how to solve a problem, how to solve every problem.
Yeah.
Those prayers are answered intuitively because we're just opening up what is essentially the right brain as an antenna. We've been using the left brain for 400 years, 500 years even. But this other left brain we sort of let grow limited, and now we're breaking through, especially in the West.
Yeah.
Now, this gets us to a place where we can then even get to a deeper flow in life and a deeper connection with other people so that we can raise everyone's energy level. And that is, of course, the you know, the idea that we're all telepathic to each other. Okay, and there's something that I believe we're discovering called the oneness intention, which raises the whole energy level of this reality, so that your life becomes more and more kind of miraculous in its unfolding. Now, I'm not saying this happens all at once. I'm saying we know the map of the integration.
Yeah,
now.
it's there, but and at the same time, one has to work, you know, doing inner work somehow to sort of clear the mind, clear the emotion.
And the good thing about these is you start with the first one, remembering synchronicity, and they integrate. You don't have to remember the first one, you just have to adopt the second one.
Right.
And it is continued, I mean, it continues the first in the second. The first and the second are continued in the third. So all this is in the book, but it's a map that I believe and I argue that it's here. We don't have to wonder what spiritual reality is anymore. We don't have to wonder what humans are here to awaken to. That's all come in just in time as predicted by the Mayan calendar.
Yeah.
Now, more comes in the more we do, and you get to your integration gets to a point where you're now living a higher level of spiritual perception. That consciousness has a sense of beauty about it. In other words, you just get to live in an enchanted forest no matter where you are.
Right.
You could be in a slum. But at the level of bliss and beauty, it's an enchanted forest. You follow me?
Yeah, follow
because
you.
That's the spiritual perception. That's the perception that comes with this level of spiritual consciousness I'm talking about. Now, we also get something else. We get an accelerated prayer power. That means we can bond together. We have what we call the Global Prayer Project, as you know. But the power of collective prayer becomes amplified. So we can actually help people from afar, not just one-on-one, in terms of helping them open up to this spiritual process that we're just talking about. And then, of course, we get to a place where we have another breakthrough spiritually. And I'm not going to describe that exactly because it's the crescendo of the 12th Insight book.
Yeah.
It's something I think people have to grok at not an intellectual level, but at a holistic level, left and right brain.
Yeah.
And, you know, so I'm not going to say anything other than there's a payoff for all this that makes it all automatic and helps us to stay at that place and walk in what I've called the miracle universe all the time.
Yeah.
And it's the ultimate giving, both to the world and to other people.
Yeah. And at the same time, you're talking about, you know, because it's sort of parallel, or the consequences of those integration, you know, the law of connection. Will you talk to us a little bit about this?
With each other, you mean?
Yeah, you mentioned the law of, because when you're going through the integration,
yes,
there's some law that sort of not guides you, but sort of, you know, take you there if you just surrender to the energy that's around.
Yeah.
And that's within.
Yeah. Well, it's that deeper connection.
I think, okay, 5 minutes. So in the end, you know, because the 12th inside, you know, it's the last of a cycle. When you look back, you know, how you felt, you know, the change in the people who read it, and how did it change you, or how did you, you know, maybe 20 years later, how, if you look back at where you were, how it changed you, how?
Well, yeah, I was a little older when this happened, so it's not like I was an 18-year-old and hit the lottery.
Yeah.
So I was pretty much grounded, and I realized that, you know, if I was going to map this whole thing out over 20 years, then I had to stay centered, not in the fame or any of the worldly results, but, you know, in that place where I'm a journalist and an explorer, and, you know, I'm seeking to garner facts and and then to make arguments that relate to people's lives that they can check out in their own hearts and see happening. So, you know, it was a struggle just to make sure I had enough personal time, make sure that I said no to publishers wanting me to, you know, do more books, do them faster. You know, most of the books in this 4-book series, you know, they were 5 or 6 years apart.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I had plenty of time to then make sure that I felt they were as accurate as they should be, you know, given the subject matter.
Yeah. Personally, you know, is there any breakthrough that sort of change that moves you forward personally?
Well, yeah, all the time. You know, all these synchronicities constantly happened because, you know, I didn't plan these out. You know, after the first book, I thought there was a 10th insight, but I didn't know for sure until it happened.
Right.
You know, so you had these first 9 insights, which were kind of a survey, an intellectual map, so to speak. But then the 10th insight was about opening up to the reality of the afterlife. You know, when that happened in the late 90s, or mid-90s to the late 90s, you know, people realized, wow, there were people having near-death experiences. We were tuning in to what the afterlife's about. That was the 10th insight. And we haven't been the same. This has gone across the culture. You know, even in places where they're still skeptical, their brains are different because we've opened up to, you know, treating the afterlife as a real place, not this, you know, not this symbolic heaven or symbolic way to not think about death. You know, it's so that happened. You know, and I said, okay, that's the 10th insight. Same thing with the 11th insight. You know, I was wondering, okay, what's going on? We have this connection with the afterlife. We know we're here on assignment, each of us, and that opens us up and makes life more fun and more conscious. But what's next? Well, all of a sudden you started hearing about laws of attraction, and everybody had a prayer group. And all of a sudden we started to see prayer and intention, and it was even studied, of course, as you know, scientifically.
Yeah.
But we suddenly said, oh, there's an inner spiritual power that we're discovering. You know, we've called it prayer, we've called it intention, whatever it is, but we know that it can help us manifest in our lives. Now, of course, you know the secret and the laws of attraction. You know that was incomplete.
Yeah.
You know, this was an intellectual awareness, but not something that would actually work in real life. A lot of people got rich. A lot of people tried it and couldn't do it. Well, the reason was that we didn't have all the facts. In the 12th insight, you know, this insight of completeness that's happening in the world, we've figured out what's left out, and that's, of course, the karmic alignment issue. You know, because if your ego wants to create something, you can create it. If you want a Cadillac, you put the pictures all over the wall, you know, everywhere. You talk about it every day.
You imagine yourself in a Cadillac.
You make your friends crazy. But you'll get the Cadillac.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, what you also get is a wake-up call of some kind. I mean, what's the biggest, the most trite thing that happens to everybody who wins a lottery? Their lives go crazy, right? I mean, their lives are destroyed, and everything falls apart. Why? Because there's a wake-up call for just when you just try to get what the ego wants, then you get all these other things that happen that are there to wake you up to what your soul wants. So what was missing in the law of attraction is being aligned with the soul, allowing your life to be guided into what to create, not sitting around and deciding what it is you want. I mean, you get close to it that way, but you've got to do the work in terms of opening up to a soul connection, a God connection, to figure out what's really going to work for you, and then do the things now that we know we have to do in terms of adopting a spiritual approach to life, which is allow yourself to be guided intuitively, but also be oriented toward helping. How can I say something or do something that will help this person I'm talking to? And also adopting a sense of radical honesty. And this is very difficult because you can't be totally honest unless you have no secrets.
Right.
And everybody has these secrets they have to deal with.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the ego thinks life's more fun if they can sneak around and do this and that. But it doesn't work that way. That just creates a life that is just like a heroin addict. You know, it takes more and more to work, and essentially gets you in the gutter.
Right.
So we know now that we have to return to integrity. And by the way, you can see all this happening already. The world has been proven to be so corrupt at every level. Why? Because people are manipulating other people to get what they think they want. But it's all collapsing of its own corruption, right? Finances, everything.
Right.
And they're trying to stick it back together with wires and clips. It's not working. It's not going to work until our economies start to be based on a giving approach, being truly of service in everything you do to other people, and not thinking of profits first, thinking of service first.
Yeah.
And profits will come.
I'm particularly interested in near-death experiences because I had mine. I had one when I was 20 years old that brought me to this work I'm doing with sound and consciousness today.
Yes.
What brought you to the near-death experience? Did you have one?
You know, I almost died at birth. So that's the closest thing I've had to a near-death experience. The only thing I get from that is that, you know, I don't know whether I had a, you know, download at that moment or something, but I have never been quite normal in terms of my development. I always was pushing for additional spiritual information every level as a child. Drove people crazy. And, you know, they were glad to get me out of there, you know, sent me off to school. But, you know, it's just been a drivenness on my part, you know, to try to map out this spiritual life that we're trying to achieve on the planet. Right. This evolution that has brought us from, you know, running around as cave dwellers all the way to here, you know, and you know, the last step in that was the Mayan calendar.
Yeah. And
you know, once I discovered it really after I'd already written most of the 12th Insight.
Oh yeah.
And so when I say discovered, I knew it was going on.
Yeah. And
I knew what the predictions were at a limited level. But once I realized what the Mayans were really trying to say, and they weren't just saying something about the end of you know, December of this year.
Yeah.
That's not what they were talking about.
We're not exploding. The world is not.
No, they weren't talking about the end of anything. They were talking about the beginning of something. And the beginning was they described very clearly for those people who really look at it, and you know, I like Kalaman's research. I think he's the best of the scholars on this information. What they were doing was charting a map of human evolution, of how what was going to happen. You know, it precisely predicted when we were going to move from wanderers and nomadic era to the village era, and then from village era to the sort of this great bringing together more and more people represented by the great empires that swept the world. And all this was bringing people closer together and more in line with a common language. You know, and it just goes on and on from there. You know, everything from the beginning of nation states, the international economy, and the worldwide economy that erupted. All of it was predicted by the Mayan calendar. And what they were aiming for was this crescendo that would happen, and which really started to happen last year, according to Kalaman, and I believe that's true. Which is the advent or the bringing in of this new consciousness, which they called a ninth wave of creation. Right. A new human was being birthed, and what that was a unity consciousness. So we have been working on, obviously, a unity consciousness, and one of the big factors in coming to unity is coming to an understanding of how spirituality works, right? Yeah. Because they all have all these competing approaches and violent.
They're all spiritual, but they want to be the boss, or
yeah. You know, so there's a huge competition, and so unity has to begin, it really has to finalize, not just in economics. You know, we're on our way economically, but what we have to get to is a spiritual agreement, and that's what I believe we're reaching, as I describe in the 12th Insight.
Yeah. James Redfield, thank you very much for this interview.
Well, thank you. It's my pleasure.
It's been mine too. Welcome.